Welcome to RealmTalk, Creatures of Faerûn. Today we're turning our attention to a denizen of the dark depths, a creature so iconic, so universally dreaded, that its very shape strikes fear into the hearts of unprepared adventurers, the Gelatinous Cube. It might look simple, just a large, transparent block of jelly gliding through dusty corridors, but make no mistake, there's far more to the Athcoid, as scholars sometimes call it, than meets the non-existent eye.
Definitely.
We've gathered some fascinating lore and observations about these peculiar oozes from, well, ancient chronicles and modern studies alike.
Indeed. And these aren't merely mindless hazards. They are strangely integrated into the ecology of subterranean spaces.
Right.
And their very existence raises questions that puzzle even the most seasoned sages about life, magic, and the peculiar forms they take in the deep realms.
Okay, let's truly delve into this. First off, the basics for anyone fortunate enough not to have encountered one. Describe this thing.
Visually, it's unmistakable. A roughly 10-foot by 10-foot cube of seemingly transparent gelatinous ooze.
Sure. Transparent jelly.
Pretty much. It's arguably the most famous geometric shape you'll find lurking in a dark passage. Its fundamental nature is simple, yet terrifying. It absorbs and digests organic matter. It's a creature that appears in records stretching way back to the earliest documented explorations of dungeons and deep places.
Right. Those foundational chronicles from ages past mention them vividly. But that simple form hides a truly complex puzzle, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
The very origin of the Athcoid is a hotbed of debate among those who study such things.
It absolutely is. When you look at the scrolls and texts, two major theories emerge regarding the Athcoid's genesis. One leans heavily into the idea of magical artifice.
Ah, the wizard theory, the concept that some incredibly clever or perhaps just incredibly bizarre mage decided to invent these things.
Precisely. This theory posits that wizards, or maybe ancient arcane societies, created gelatinous cubes for a practical, if morbid, purpose: dungeon maintenance.
Dungeon maintenance? Like cleaning?
Exactly. Imagine it a self-propelled sanitation device, a kind of dungeon Roomba cleaning up after the occupants.
A dungeon Roomba.
Okay. The cubic shape, in this view, isn't an accident of nature. It was a deliberate design choice, perfectly sized to scour standard 10-foot corridors from wall to wall, preventing them from slipping under doors and ensuring corners were meticulously cleaned.
That makes a weird kind of sense.
Some accounts speculate they might even be an accidental byproduct of large-scale magical experiments with transmutation or conjuration gone slightly awry.
Oh.
Or perhaps even designed as specialized waste disposal units for some long-vanished thaumaturgical civilization.
That explanation feels logical in a twisted dungeon builder kind of way, especially given how often we find them in artificial structures. But the other theory, that feels far more rooted in primal horror.
That would be the abyssal spore theory. This one connects gelatinous cubes directly to the darkest planes, specifically to the demon lord Juiblex, the faceless lord, patron of oozes and slimes.
Juiblex.
Many horrifying texts claim that oozes are not born, but simply fragments or direct spawn of Juiblex himself. There's also the elder deity Ghaunadaur, that which lurks, a primordial entity considered a patron of oozes in general.
Ghaunadaur too.
With gelatinous cubes noted as being especially favored. There's even theological debate among cultists as to whether Juiblex is merely an aspect of Ghaunadaur, suggesting a potentially unified, deeply unsettling origin at the roots of the abyss.
And there's a specific, highly unusual case that lends chilling weight to this abyssal connection, isn't there?
The case of Ghaunadaur. Yes. This sentient gelatinous cube, encountered in a place saturated with the influence of Juiblex, seemed to awaken into full self-awareness.
Sentient. A cube.
Exactly. This is profoundly abnormal behavior for an Athcoid, and points strongly towards planar influence having the power to, well, fundamentally alter the very nature of these creatures.
So are we talking about magical cleaning supplies that got out of control, or literal chunks of a demon lord? Which is it?
That's the core riddle. It's possible the origins are not mutually exclusive.
Really? How so?
Could some gelatinous cubes arise from direct abyssal influence, while others are the result of mortal magic manipulating that same primordial ooze stuff, effectively tailoring abyssal chaos for their own purposes?
Like a blend of both.
Perhaps. The persistence of the cubic form, regardless of the suspected source, hints at a remarkably stable, perhaps even unnaturally reinforced, state of being.
Let's turn our attention to the creature itself. What can we glean about its internal workings, its biology?
Despite the apparent simplicity, there's a surprising complexity. The structure is paramount. That translucent 10-foot cube is the standard, though reports exist of larger 15-foot variants.
Bigger ones.
And whispers persist of colossal ones in the deepest Underdark. For their size, they are incredibly heavy. A standard 10-foot cube is estimated to weigh around 15,000 pounds.
15,000 pounds. That's an immense weight, essentially a solid block of jelly.
Exactly. Their composition is thought to involve complex proteins, perhaps structurally similar to collagen, that provide just enough rigidity to maintain that precise shape, requiring constant regeneration.
Oh, yeah.
But while they hold their form, they aren't really rigid. They can flow around smaller obstacles, squeeze through passages that are tight but not impossibly small, reforming their cube once through.
So they can squeeze a bit.
A bit, yes. They can't flatten into a film like some slimes, but they are certainly not solid.
And the digestion, I understand, is quite thorough.
It is. They secrete potent acidic juices not just in one area, but throughout their entire mass.
Throughout the whole thing, wow.
Yeah. This rapidly breaks down organic matter, flesh, bone, fungi. Anything that was once living is dissolved surprisingly quickly.
But not metal or stone.
Inorganic materials, though, metal armor, stone, coins, adventurers' gear are generally unaffected. These remain behind, sometimes suspended within the ooze, sometimes left in a pile after the cube moves on or is defeated. What's fascinating is that the acid seems to be contained in movable, elastic cavities or bubbles within the cube, suggesting a degree of control, a targeted digestive process, rather than a simple homogeneous acidic mass.
Targeted digestion.
Oh, okay.
Now, I've read older accounts that mention a paralyzing effect on contact, but that seems less common now.
Ah, yes. Historical accounts, particularly from older scholarly ages, do describe the cube secreting a substance that would paralyze a victim on contact for a significant duration.
That's so terrifying.
It would have made them even more terrifyingly effective, completely immobilizing prey for slow digestion. However, contemporary observations tend to focus more on the physical restraint and suffocation that occur once a creature is engulfed.
So just being stuck and unable to breathe.
Primarily, it's a standing puzzle for scholars. Did this trait vary by lineage or region? Has the creature itself changed over time? Or were earlier accounts simply misinterpreting the effects, perhaps mistaking the numbing pain or shock for outright paralysis? It's one of those traits that seems to shift depending on which historical period's lore you're reading.
Without eyes, how do they even sense anything in the pitch black of the Underdark?
They primarily rely on blind sight, effective out to about 60 feet.
Blind sight. How does that work?
This sense isn't based on light or sight, but on detecting vibrations in the ground or air, which works perfectly in their dark, quiet habitats.
Ah, vibrations.
Their immunity to being deafened lends further support to this idea that their primary awareness comes from subtle tremors. They also seem strongly drawn to organic matter and movement, suggesting they possess some form of chemoreception, sensing biological compounds.
Sensing life, basically.
And thermoreception, actively seeking out warmth. Some anecdotal reports also mention a faint, almost chlorine-like scent lingering in passages where a cube has recently passed, which might be another subtle clue.
A chlorine smell noted. So they feel vibrations, smell life, and sense warmth. Then they just glide forward. How fast do they move?
They are not fast. A standard gelatinous cube moves with a slow, distinct, squelching glide, typically around 15 feet in a given time frame.
Pretty slow then.
Generally, yes. They usually stick to the ground, unable to climb walls or ceilings, though they can muster a brief surge of speed, a dash, if they detect prey and need to close the distance quickly.
And they seem remarkably difficult to truly incapacitate.
They possess considerable resilience. They appear immune to many conditions that would affect creatures with more complex physiologies or minds effects, like those that would blind you, charm you, render you deaf, or even frankly exhaust or frighten you.
Right. Makes sense for an ooze.
Like the paralyzing acid, the list of specific immunities documented in scholarly records has varied over time. Older texts sometimes mentioned immunity to electricity or magical polymorphing that aren't always consistent in newer observations.
Again, with the changes over time.
Again, this leads back to the question, are the creatures changing, or is our understanding simply evolving?
Let's talk about their role in the environment, their ecology and behavior. They're often described as silent scavengers or ambush predators.
Their preferred habitat is dark, enclosed subterranean spaces, dungeons, caverns, the winding passages of the Underdark. Bright light and extreme temperatures are highly unpleasant for them.
So no sunbathing cubes.
Definitely not. That's why you won't find them basking on a sunny hilltop. They seem to be perpetually active, mindless, omnivorous foragers. They don't appear to sleep, constantly scouring their territory for anything organic to consume.
And there's that classic piece of survival wisdom about them.
Absolutely critical lore for anyone exploring deep places. An immaculately clean dungeon passage
That was floored.
is arguably the most reliable telltale sign that an Athcoid is, or recently was, nearby. They methodically consume any organic detritus, dust, mold, fungi, fallen adventurers, leaving the bare stone scrubbed clean.
And their transparency makes them the perfect ambush predator. How does the engulfment process actually work?
Their signature attack. It's deceptively simple. They just glide forward into the space occupied by a creature.
Move into your space.
Exactly. Avoiding it requires a quick reaction, a swift physical maneuver. If you fail, you are immediately enveloped within the cube's mass. This results in immediate acid damage, you become restrained, unable to breathe, and the suffocation is a significant, often overlooked danger.
Right, you can't breathe inside jelly.
And you continue to take severe acid damage each passing moment you remain inside. Getting free is difficult, requiring a focused action and considerable strength.
Tough to get out of.
Very. A standard cube can envelope several smaller creatures at once or trap a single larger one within its bulk. They can also extend a sort of pseudopod for a simpler attack.
So they're essentially living garbage disposals for the dungeon ecosystem.
In many ways, yes. They function as macabre dungeon janitors, consuming waste, carrion, and unfortunate intruders.
A grim janitor.
This inadvertently provides a service to other dungeon inhabitants by preventing disease outbreaks and keeping pest populations down. By dissolving organic matter, they significantly alter nutrient flow in subterranean environments. And few creatures prey on them, thanks to their acidic composition and generally unpleasant nature.
How do more of them come into being? Do they breed?
Not in the conventional sense. Their reproduction is primarily asexual through fission and budding.
Fission and budding.
Fission is when a mature cube divides into two or more smaller, independent cubes, sometimes theorized to happen after several years of growth. Budding is when they excrete a smaller mass that develops into a new cube independently.
And these new, smaller cubes are just left to fend for themselves.
Precisely. There is no parental care. Juvenile cubes are smaller, more vulnerable, and entirely independent from the moment of their creation.
Little cubes wandering around.
They face numerous risks, including the possibility of being reabsorbed if they encounter a larger, hungrier cube, even potentially the one that birthed them before they've grown sufficiently. They start by feeding on minute organic particles and grow relatively rapidly.
They're often described as immortal. Is that true?
They are often referred to as immortal in the sense that they don't seem to die of old age or senescence.
Okay.
Their existence typically only ends due to external forces, starvation, desiccation, or being destroyed by adventurers. This can be viewed as a kind of perpetual renewal through division, much like certain single-celled organisms. The lineage persists, even if the individual mass divides and effectively ceases to exist as a singular entity.
There are also peculiar reports of mature cubes temporarily merging together. That sounds very strange.
It is one of the stranger documented behaviors. Mature cubes have occasionally been observed gliding together and merging into a single, larger entity, remaining fused for a few days before separating back into their original forms.
Why would they do that?
The purpose remains unknown. Is it a strategy for hunting larger prey, sharing resources, or some unknown aspect of their survival or life cycle? It adds another layer to the mystery of these creatures.
Are all gelatinous cubes the same, or are there different types or variants?
While the 10-foot cube is the archetypal form, they are classified within the broader oozes phylum. Their distinguishing characteristic is that persistent cubic shape and their limited ability to squeeze through very tiny gaps compared to truly amorphous oozes.
Got it.
As for variants, beyond the documented larger sizes of 15 feet or even colossal scale, some scattered lore speaks of potential environmental adaptations. Sea cubes, night cubes, or green cubes, hinting at specializations, though detailed accounts are rare.
Sea cubes. Huh.
There are even fringe, almost certainly mythological whispers of an orange octahedron.
An orange octahedron. Okay, that's out there. And then there's Glabagool again, the sentient one. That's the ultimate variant, isn't it?
Glabagool is a profound, perhaps unique anomaly. A gelatinous cube in a location steeped in Juiblex's power that developed genuine sentience.
Still can't quite wrap my head around that.
It's incredibly unusual, demonstrating not just self-awareness, but atypical behaviors for its kind, a degree of pacifism unless threatened, even curiosity. This case throws a wrench into everything we think we know about ooze cognition and the influence of planar powers.
Right.
It's a truly significant subject for study, begging the question of whether other oozes or even other cubes could potentially harbor hidden sparks of intelligence under the right, perhaps terrible, conditions.
How do other creatures and denizens of Faerûn interact with these things? Beyond being food, I mean.
For adventurers, they are a quintessential hazard and a common obstacle. Walking blindly into one is a deadly, often sudden end.
Yeah, bad news.
Clearing one is practically considered a minor rite of passage for those who delve into dungeons. Despite their predictable slowness and seeming simplicity, they are deceptively lethal.
But what about dungeon bosses or smarter creatures?
More intelligent inhabitants of the Underdark and deep dungeons, however, often utilize them. Because they are mindless and relatively easily contained compared to other hazards, they're employed for waste disposal as slow-moving sentries or barriers, or even deliberately lured into pits to serve as living traps.
Using them as traps?
Clever, I guess. Their shape and aversion to fire or extreme cold make them more manageable to deploy than, say, a shapeless black pudding.
There's even old folklore specifically about them.
Yes, that classic grim piece of survival wisdom is known widely among seasoned delvers. Where dungeon halls be wide and dungeon floors be clean, a cube there surely glides, a horror felt unseen.
Chilling.
It's a simple rhyme, but one that has saved countless lives. The faint chlorine-like scent or residue they can leave is another subtle clue experienced explorers learn to watch for. Knowledge levels vary wildly, of course. The unwary novice is the most likely victim.
And those divine connections we touched upon earlier, they're just monsters. They hold significance for some entities and their followers.
Absolutely. Their ties to Juiblex and Ghaunadaur mean that for cultists of these entities, particularly in the deepest Underdark, gelatinous cubes can be seen as sacred creatures, physical manifestations of their deity's essence.
Sacred cubes.
They might be protected, revered, or even incorporated into bizarre rituals. The Slice, that race of sentient oozes, even have an origin myth claiming the goddess Shar shaped a gelatinous cube into their initial form.
Char.
Drow, who worship Ghaunadaur, might use them as guardians, and even powerful beings like beholders, such as Xanathar and Skullport, are known to employ them as parts of their elaborate, deadly lairs or schemes.
So context matters.
The context of an encounter matters immensely. Is it a wild specimen, a simple tool, or something held sacred?
It's also fascinating how their documented traits seem to vary across different historical ages, isn't it?
That's one of the most perplexing puzzles for those who study these creatures. If you compare chronicles from different scholarly eras corresponding to distinct periods of delving history, you find variations in what's described.
Like the paralysis thing.
Exactly. The prominence and effectiveness of that paralyzing acid, for example, is depicted very differently across the centuries. The specific immunities they were recorded as having also shifted. Were they truly immune to electricity or certain magical effects in past ages in ways they aren't consistently now?
Why would that be? Are the creatures themselves adapting and changing, or are scholars just getting better at observing them?
It could be a combination. There's the adaptive scourge hypothesis, the idea that with their simple biology and rapid asexual reproduction, they might be able to evolve and adapt relatively quickly to the challenges posed by adventurers.
Adapting to adventurers. Scary thought.
If lightning magic becomes a common weapon against them, perhaps resistant strains become more prevalent over generations. Or it could simply reflect different researchers studying different regional variants, or the long, slow process of refining our understanding through accumulated observations. It does, however, raise the intriguing possibility that in very ancient, long-sealed dungeons, one might encounter archaic variants of the Athcoid, still possessing some of those older, perhaps deadlier traits.
Are there any particularly famous, documented encounters or locations known for their cubes?
Undermountain beneath Waterdeep is certainly infamous for its gelatinous cubes. That classic quote, "The dungeon's floors were spotless," that should have been our first clue, is often attributed to cautionary tales from there.
Right, the spotless floor clue again.
Adventurers even give specific cubes names, referring to them as custodians of particular passages, like the custodian of the catacombs or the custodian of twisted caverns within Undermountain's depths. The very old ruins of Andril were also noted as an early site for documented encounters.
And the aftermath of a fatal encounter is quite distinctive and grim.
Gruesome indeed. The organic matter is dissolved entirely, but the inorganic items, weapons, armor, coins, jewelry, even skeletons, remain suspended within the cube's mass, or are expelled afterward.
Like treasure floating in jelly.
This makes them macabre, slow-moving time capsules, or sources of unexpected treasure. Finding a long-lost adventurer's gear perfectly preserved within a cube is a disturbing sight.
What happens to the acid when the cube is destroyed? Is it still dangerous?
There's some debate on that point among those who recover items from defeated cubes. Some say the acidic property ceases its aggressive dissolution upon the creature's death,
Okay, so maybe safe then.
while others claim it remains potent for a time, making retrieval of items a hazardous task in itself. Regardless, the psychological impact on any survivors, the sheer horror of witnessing or experiencing slow dissolution by a seemingly mindless entity while your gear remains intact, contributes significantly to the Gelatinous Cube's fearsome reputation.
Yeah.
It's a uniquely terrible fate.
So the next time you're exploring a dark corridor in the realms and notice the floor is unusually clean, perhaps you'll remember this conversation and think twice before stepping forward.
Indeed. And consider not just the immediate physical threat, but the many unanswered questions these creatures represent. Is Glabagool a singular miracle? Or could other oozes truly harbor hidden sparks of potential sentience waiting to be ignited?
It's a chilling thought.
Could their origins genuinely be a blend of ancient magic and primeval abyssal chaos? A terrifying marriage of artifice and abyss? They remind us that even the seemingly simple, predictable horrors of the deep realms can hold layers of mystery waiting to be uncovered.
Or maybe better left unknown.
Perhaps.
Fascinating and terrifying in equal measure. This has been Realm Talk. Creatures of Faerûn.